Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating narrative. It actually starts out as this beautiful, hand-drawn watercolor story, but it ultimately reveals one of the absolute most complex, real-world debates in marine conservation. We're going to look at a remarkable rescue mission, a stunning piece of visual storytelling called The Song of the Silver Sea, and the intense discourse it sparked regarding what we call the Danish Paradox.
Okay, let's dive straight into this. Our story begins in a breathtaking, sun-dappled underwater forest of kelp. Picture these really soft tones of cerulean and emerald green. Here we meet two mermaids, Lyra, with flowing dark brown hair, and Mina, who has this shimmering blonde hair. And as they're swimming through the kelp, they stumble upon just a heartbreaking sight. A massive humpback whale is stranded on a shallow sandbar. His skin is super dull, his eyes are half closed, and as Mina realizes in that exact moment, he's lost his song. He's fading. He is listless, almost completely drained of his life energy.
So realizing they absolutely can't save him alone, the mermaids surface near a German coastal village and sing this piercing, melodic note to call for help. And what happens next is just a beautiful display of unity. Dozens of villagers gather at the shoreline, but instead of fear, they're inspired. They join hands, and together with the mermaids, they send the whale energy. In the story, this is visualized as these glowing golden particles of light and love drifting right across the water. And suddenly, the whale's eye flutters open. A tiny spark of light actually returns.
Part 1. Mermaids and Humans Unite.
That initial spark kicks off an incredible rescue operation. Now, I love breaking down the logistics of complex missions, and this one requires absolute pinpoint coordination between the humans up on the surface and the mermaids down in the deep. Here's exactly how they pull it off. Two sailors from the village, Captain Hans and young Eric, fire up a sturdy tugboat. But they don't just use standard ropes, right? They actually tow a massive, reinforced rubber ring to act as a floating sanctuary. Lyra and Mina manage to guide the massive whale directly into this buoyant ring. With the lift from the ring and that gentle, steady pull from the tugboat, they actually manage to free the whale from the sandbar. And just like that, the epic journey north begins. Charting out their journey north, their route takes them from the north coast of Germany, past the towering chalk cliffs of Rügen, squeezing through the really narrow Danish straits, and finally heading out toward the vast open waters of the North Sea. And throughout this entire montage, the mermaids are singing calming songs to the whale, which are visualized as these shimmering watercolor swirls floating right through the water. Incredibly, the whale actually begins to feel better. He starts emitting a low, vibrating rumble to sing right back to them. Part 2. The Silver Sea Release. As they finally reach the open North Sea, the energy really starts to build. The water around them shifts from those coastal greens to a deep, crystalline indigo. It's time for the emotional climax of our story. Captain Hans unbuckles the heavy rubber ring, and the whale is free. He dives deep and then just breaches the surface with an absolute explosion of energy. And to say thank you, he clears his blowhole, sending this massive shimmering spray into the air that forms a fleeting rainbow heart right there in the mist. As he waves his massive tail flute goodbye, Lyra and Mina smile, bidding farewell to the brother of the deep. It is a triumphant, totally picture-perfect ending. It's a beautiful vision, for sure, but, well, here is where we have to pivot. You see, this poetic watercolor fiction was heavily inspired by the very real, highly publicized rescue of an actual humpback whale named Timmy, sometimes called Hope. And instead of simply ending the story at the joyous release, the narrative lingers. As Captain Hans, young Eric, Lyra, and Mina watch Timmy swim north into the horizon, they're forced to confront a pretty harsh reality about the path ahead. Timmy is free, yes, but what exactly lies on his route north? Part 3. A dangerous migratory route. The crew on the water knows that the real-life inspiration for their story faced a truly harrowing ordeal. Back in March 2026, the real Timmy, stranded in the shallow, low-salinity waters of the Baltic Sea near Wismar, Germany, this severely damaged his skin. After weeks of failed attempts to move him, a spectacular, privately funded rescue operation finally took place on May 2nd. Timmy was carefully loaded onto a water-filled barge and transported way out to the North Sea, where he was released about 70 kilometers off the coast of Skagen, Denmark. It was a massive, celebrated success, but releasing him right there put him on a direct migratory path toward highly dangerous waters. It's a grim reality the characters are suddenly realizing as they watch him go. What leaves Captain Han and the mermaids so conflicted is understanding exactly what lies north of them. The waters Timmy is migrating toward border the Färöer Islands, and the Färöer Islands are home to the Grindadrap.
So the crucial point we really need to understand here is this practice. The Grindadrap is a traditional drive hunt, and it primarily targets pilot whales and Atlantic white-sided dolphins. While the Färöer Islands are politically part of the Kingdom of Denmark, they operate autonomously, and this hunt is a deeply rooted traditional summer practice there.
Just looking at the geography of the hunt for a second, the animals are typically driven into approved bays and harbors. Locations include Skala Färöer, and to put that into perspective, over 1,400 dolphins were hunted there in a single massive event in September 2021. Other locations include Klaksvik, the capital Torshov, and Vestmanna. The issue is, these bays sit exactly in the northern waters that migratory whales like Timmy literally must traverse if they want to survive.
Part 4. The Danish Paradox. And this brilliantly illustrates the geographic reality that ignited an absolute firestorm in the media and on social platforms following Timmy's rescue. Observers quickly dubbed this the Danish Paradox. And it's this exact contradiction that our characters are grappling with right from the deck of their tugboat. Think about it. On one hand, off the coast of Skagen, Denmark, you have immense human effort, incredibly complex logistical coordination, and massive financial resources deployed to save exactly one humpback whale. But on the other hand, just a few hundred nautical miles north, operating under the exact same Danish flag, you have the authorized traditional hunting of hundreds of whales and dolphins annually.
Now, this debate fiercely divides two very opposing sides, and it's important we look at both. On the local tradition side, the inhabitants of the Färöer Islands view the meat and blubber obtained from the Grindadrap as a vital historical part of their self-sustainment. To them, it's a completely autonomous cultural practice. On the flip side of that, global animal rights NGOs fiercely criticize the hunt. They point to what they describe as brutal methods, like the severing of spinal cords, and they heavily highlight this glaring double standard of moving heaven and earth to rescue one whale while simultaneously hunting hundreds of others.
And organizations like Sea Shepherd and the Whale and Dolphin Conservation, well, they certainly didn't ignore Timmy's rescue. Instead, they utilized the massive viral attention around it. They argued that just celebrating Timmy's release simply isn't enough. Their stance is that the entire migratory route must be protected, which kind of brings our heroes, standing on their boat looking out at those indigo waves, to question their own efforts. I mean, is pouring their hearts and massive resources into saving one single whale ultimately futile if the ocean he's released into remains unsafe for his species? Which brings us to our final thought. We started out today with a really magical watercolor tale of mermaids and villagers joining hands to save a majestic creature. It was a story of pure light and love. But the real world? It's far more complicated than that. As Lyra, Mina, Hans, and Eric are left staring out as Timmy swims off into the horizon, the story leaves them, and really it leaves us, with a profound moral question to ponder. What does it truly mean to save a single life if the ocean itself remains a battlefield? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll leave you to think on that.